think entrepreneurship is such a fascinating subject, and it's much broader than business, and it involves a human being, right? Or at least a human being, if not many human beings, before you can be an entrepreneur or be entrepreneurial. So that's the part. Business is so like non-human sometimes, it's crank out stuff. Do you agree with that? Yeah.
Oh, Kelly, question.
Kelly, yeah. What'd you got?
In listening to Danny talk, as far as empathy goes, I think when we look at science, there's mechanical science versus quantum science. And I think that's one thing. Is this the end of science? I think if we're looking at mechanical science, if we follow that path, it may be the end of society. And then I think also religion versus spirituality. Mm-hmm. And then politics versus a civil society. Mm-hmm. Alan Watts summed up spirituality by East and West, with the Western version or model being a porcelain model, and the Eastern version being a spiritual model. I think that there's commonality, that when Barth poses light as the common denominator that we all share, that light to science would be like love would be to religion. And this morning when I've been trying to really stay grounded. And so I've been doing a centering prayer in the morning where I make myself just stop for 20 minutes and light a candle. And sometimes I'll read something from philosophy. Sometimes it'll be scripture, but I'll just sit with it. And what I was sitting with the last few days has been to see God's face. And I'm spiritual, but I'm not this dogmatic religious person at all. But as I was contemplating that this morning, I spent some time writing after that, and it came to me as I was writing that if God is love, then when we love others, we see that reflected back to us in their face. Just an act of kindness when you don't know somebody's politics, when you don't know anything about them, maybe you just do something nice at the grocery store. Perfect. You immediately get a response, and you see that, just like flipping a light switch. And so I think looking for the least common denominator, and Barth is uniquely positioned to have this conversation, because many people are spiritual, many people are scientific, but when you do have, and I've read this once, 1.5 times. And, the thing that stood out the most to me is the way in which you can language science and spirituality. It's really woven together beautifully. And I don't just say that because you're on the call. It really, I wondered, is it going to be too heavy in science? But I know you well enough to know that you're deeply steeped in faith. And I thought, are we going to get religious here? And there was just such a nice balance of both, to where I didn't feel either subject was void of the other. Perfect. So, I think that God and that love and that light analogy would be the essence of what I'm trying to pose.